Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and we are back with some Premier League predictions here on Match Day 10 already in the season. We're getting into November. I'm starting to see the table shape up. It's interesting to see what will if there's more movement to come along before the Christmas congestion of fixtures. So let's take a look here. We've got the first matchup is Newcastle and Arsenal happening on Saturday. This is interesting for Arsenal because they're now with that draw against Liverpool, they're a few points away, and if from the top of the table, and Liverpool doing a lot better than what maybe some people predicted early in the year, and Man City always being quality and not dropping points much at all. Arsenal comes into this game feeling like we need to get 3 points on the board in order to progress and make sure that we don't lose any more ground from the top of the league. Newcastle as well as, I'm curious to see what Newcastle fans are thinking, but sitting kind of in 12th right now, mid-table, seems a little bit low to where some of their aspirations are. Generally, especially with the takeover and having Eddie Howe there, it seems like they're underperforming for where they would expect to be. I do see Arsenal as the better team here, but I don't think this is going to be easy. I think this is going to be a tight one. Newcastle did well against Chelsea, a 2-1 win for Chelsea there. I do think Newcastle's going to lose, but this is going to be down to the wire. It might be a 80th, 85th minute winner for Arsenal just after they've maybe had a lot of possession. They can go in and get 3 points here. So I'm giving this the first matchup to Arsenal to get the 3 points that they need. Because honestly, other than the draw they had against Liverpool, the only reason they've lost points is because they've gotten a red card. So as long as Arsenal can keep things clean, I do see them getting 3 points here. Next, we have Bournemouth hosting Manchester City. Bournemouth, again, are sitting in that mid-table position. Did decently well to go to Aston Villa and get a solid draw. And previous to that, they got that win against Arsenal. So they're getting some good results on the board. But Man City are also doing well. Now, maybe they should have done a little bit better against Southampton, only with a 1-0 victory. And then the week before that, just a 2-1 win against Wolves. But this is what Man City does, is that, even if they don't have their best game, they go out there and confirm that they can get 3 points on the board. And I think that might be the case here. I think Bournemouth might have a little bit more attacking options than Southampton did. So I think this is going to be similar to the result that Man City had a couple weeks ago, a 2-1 victory for Man City here. But I still think they're going to go out and get the 3 points they need. The next matchup we have is Ipswich hosting Leicester. This is going to be a big one as you look at the bottom of the table and thinking, okay, are teams going to start separating themselves from the bottom, and we can start getting a clear idea of who are those teams that are going to struggle to stay in the Premier League. Leicester had done well, even though they lost last week. They had gotten 2 solid wins against Southampton and Bournemouth to put themselves out of the relegation zone and push them up to 15th. Ipswich are still looking for that first win, and that's tough because you have to win to move up the table, and with the 4 draws they have, that is not going to be sufficient. And right now they're sitting in that 18th position. So this is going to be one of those where Ipswich says this is a result we need to have, and I'm curious if that's going to reflect on this game. Leicester, I think, could do well, and I think their form is a little bit better. I am going to give the edge here and say that Ipswich are going to have an opportunity to make this a close game. They barely lost to Brentford in that 4-3 matchup, and even going down to 10 men. So I think Ipswich are going to get a draw here. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be their first win. If it is, that's going to be great for them. That gives them an opportunity to jump up the table a little bit. But I think it's going to be a draw, and I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. A few goals in there, but at the end of the day, nothing separating these two at the moment. Then we've got Liverpool and Brighton, two teams that are towards the top of the table. Brighton has had a good start to their season with 16 points off of their first 9 games. And despite even the draw that they had last week against Wolves, they had solid wins against Newcastle, and there's another one I was looking at recently, which was... no, they lost to Chelsea, but they beat Tottenham. So win against Tottenham, win against Newcastle before they had lost or draw to Wolves there. So they're a quality team. They're going to be up towards the top half of the table again this year, which I think is great for Brighton fans, for the success that they've had, despite all the changes they've had over the last few years. But I think Liverpool are on another level. It's going to be hard to see Liverpool drop points. I know that they have here and there. So they had the draw against Arsenal and that loss to, I think it was Forest earlier in the year. But otherwise, they've been very solid, and I think will continue to be that way. They've been very good defensively, only letting in 5 goals throughout the first 9 matches. And I think they are a solid contender to win the league this year. So I am going to give them the victory here. I think Brighton is a quality team, so I'm not going to necessarily have this as a big blowout, but I'm going to say maybe a 2-0 victory. I think enough to say that Liverpool's defense is solid and that Liverpool has opportunities on the attack to get some wins here. So 2-0. Maybe that's a second goal because Brighton's pressing for a draw and they get it in the 90th minute or injury time. So 2-0 I think is a reasonable mark for that game. Next we have Nottingham Forest hosting West Ham. And for West Ham, despite their win against Manchester United, and we'll talk about Manchester United a little bit later, they still haven't really kind of gotten things going. They've had some tough losses recently, and they're sitting right now in 13th on the table, which maybe is a little lower than what some people would have expected. They might be closer to that mid-table, maybe a little bit below the big 6 teams, but they're still trying to figure out what's going to work for them. Forest, I think, are a little bit more solid. And this is me saying I'm very surprised by this. I had Forest going down, getting relegated, and I'm very surprised on how well they're doing. They're getting the points that they need to, though, right? When you look at some of their matchups, they won against Leicester, they won against Crystal Palace, but then they're getting some surprise results as well. Draws against Chelsea. There was a draw against Brighton earlier in the year. Oh, that crazy win against Liverpool. So, they're getting good results, and I think that's going to continue here. West Ham, I do think, maybe on paper have some better quality players, but Forest is getting it done. And I think, I saw some highlights where Chris Wood seems to just be popping up with goals in any scenario, and so I think they're going to still do that. I think it's going to be close, though. I'm going to give it just maybe a 1-0 victory for Forest, but I think they're going to get 3 more points, and they're going to be sticking around, at least for now, in that top half of the table. This next one's an interesting one. We have Southampton and Everton, 2 teams that are wanting to state their claim to stay in the Premier League. Everton has done a little bit better so far, and actually, when you look at their form guide, they have not lost a game in their last 5. I think Sean Dyche is doing well to make sure they're playing well defensively, which I think is the key for a team like Everton to stay in more games and make sure that they can have an opportunity to win. Where Southampton is still struggling to get goals on the board. Only 6 goals so far in this campaign, is tied for last with Crystal Palace, and it's hard to see them getting more goals here. And so I see a team that's very struggling with goals against a team that is doing recently well defensively. That tells me that I don't think Southampton are going to get any goals here, which means that either it's going to be a draw or a win. And I think Everton can do enough offensively to get a win here. I think it's going to be a tight one, just a 1-0 victory. Now, it could be interesting. This one could be a little bit more wide open because both teams feel like they're a little bit more competitive in this, and it could be a high-scoring game. I just don't think that that's Everton's game and where Everton wants to be. Where they've been successful is playing well defensively and getting their opportunities to score offensively. Southampton might have a lot of possession, but that does not mean they're going to get the win. So I give Everton the 3 points here. Next up, we have another set of teams that are at the bottom of the table that are trying to push their way away from relegation. Wolves hosting Crystal Palace. And actually, both of these teams had got some great results last week. Wolverhampton going out to Brighton and getting a solid draw, 2-2 draw. And Crystal Palace surprising everyone by getting a nice home win against Tottenham. So both of these teams are looking a little bit up and thinking, if we can get some more results like that, this is going to turn things around. The problem that I have is where is that coming from, right? The Wolves still have not won their first game this year, and then Crystal Palace, that was their first win against Tottenham there, and that was just enough to now push them ahead of Ipswich and just sit outside the relegation zone. So with that said, this game could be totally up in the air. I think both of these teams are going to go out to try to win the game. I think this could be a high-scoring game, but I am giving the slight edge to Crystal Palace here. I think Wolves give up the most goals so far, 25 goals so far, but Crystal Palace also doesn't score a lot. Actually, I'm going to backtrack there, and I'm going to say that this is a draw. I think there's lots of goals in there. I'm going to be bold and say something like 3-3. Lots of goals but I think it's going to be kind of just a draw here. There won't be anything doing. However, I will say with any of these teams, a big 3 points would be huge. For Crystal Palace, that pushes them further away from relegation. Wolves then gets their first win on the board if they can get a win and push themselves a little bit further and giving them a chance to move themselves out of relegation. But I am going to state this game will be a draw. Next we have the Tottenham Hotspurs against the Aston Villa, going out to London for that game. So when we look at Tottenham, again, there's some struggles there. Like, even looking at the table, they're sitting in 8th. I think more people saw them potentially pushing further up the table, and I think they have the potential to. It's just that they're doing some Tottenham-like things and dropping points. Like, that loss against Crystal Palace is tough. Aston Villa, I think, has also been solid. They have not lost in 5 games, but they've had a fair bit of draws recently, right? So they drew against Bournemouth, and a good win against Fulham, but draws against Manchester United, and draw against Ipswich. So there are some times where they're not hitting on all cylinders, and I think part of that might be due to there's a lot of focus on the Champions League, that they've been doing very well there, and perhaps then their rotation means that they drop some points here or there. I think in this case, they're going to be playing a strong squad. I think this is an opportunity for Aston Villa to push their way and maintain their top 4 position in the Premier League. So I do see that they're going to get a win here. I'm going to say that there's going to be a fair bit of goals in this one. I'm going to say maybe a 3-2 victory for Aston Villa. Back and forth game, probably one of the main games to watch this week. Would be this one here. So Aston Villa getting the 3 points. Then we got an interesting one, which is Manchester United without Erik ten Hag now, and most people are stating that Ruben Amorim is going to be the new head coach there. I don't think he's going to be there this weekend, or if he is, he might be watching from the stands. And Ruud van Nistelrooy is going to be the interim manager there. What normally seems to be the case is that there is a little bit of bump in form when you have kind of a change or an interim manager coming in. And potentially that could happen here, especially because Chelsea, they've had some decent results, but they also have their own slip-ups as well. And so it'll be interesting to see how this game works out. Manchester United had a good Carabao Cup game against Leicester under Ruud van Nistelrooy, and I think this could be an interesting one. However, I don't think that they're going to go out and get a win. I think they are going to get a draw here, and so I'm picking a 1-1 draw for Man United. Maybe a good showing for them to in front of a new manager. We'll see. I do think Chelsea has done well this year, and I think they're a good candidate to be pushing towards Champions League this year. I do see, though, this one could be one of those banana skin games where Manchester United, there's nothing to lose for them here, and under a new manager, they might just have a different fire under them to propel them to a draw in this game. The last matchup we have is an interesting one, as we have two mid-table teams going at it. Fulham and Brentford in maybe a non-traditional derby game. Both of them are doing well this year. Sitting in the top half, Brentford in 9th, Fulham in 10th, and both of them have had very good results. And so they've done well, and they've deserved to be up the table this year. If we look at last week, Fulham did draw to Everton, which maybe isn't the greatest result, and Brentford had a 4-3 victory against Ipswich, even when Ipswich were down to 10 men. So it's tough to know kind of where these teams sit and how well they're going to do against each other. If this was at home against Brentford, I might give the edge to Brentford. They have a very good counter-attacking style that I think would work well against a team like Fulham. But away from home, I think that's a little bit tougher. I think, and I know I've done a lot here, but I think I'm going to do another draw and maybe a higher scoring draw here. So 2-2 draw I'm going to call for in this one. So those are my predictions. If you have your own predictions, please put them down in the comments below. I'd be gladly to read them and see how you think. Please like and subscribe, as that helps support my channel. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.